Hello. Hey, chat. How are you guys doing? What's up, Anna? Hey, Hope. Glad you could join. What's up, Nikki? Thanks for joining. Hey, Bigfoot. Glad you're back. Hey, Patrick. How's it going? Hi, your grannies. What's up, your grannies? Oh, how are you guys doing? Okay, do you guys know what I just saw this article the other day. Have you guys ever heard of sounding? You know what sounding is? I just figured this. I just found out about this, and it's so weird. All right, let me show you an article. What's up, Gaz? Azwa. Hey, Petrie. What's up? Hey, Didi. You got a ticket? Oh, Bigfoot. Not like a speeding ticket? I feel bad for you. How much is a speeding ticket these days? Like $300? What's up, Kelly? Yakin. What's up, Gakin? All right, have you guys heard of sounding? Let me look up an article for you. This is so funny. I didn't know you could do this. New York. It was an expired license plate? Ah, no. That's your own fault. Wait, hold on, let me change the screen. Okay. Shit, stop with the ads. Read this headline. Teen gets USB cable stuck in penis in backfired attempt to measure length. All right. Like, how can you not click on an article like this? So, but the headline is wrong, actually. So the headline is misleading. Okay, I'll tell you why. So I didn't know you can do this. It's a thing called sounding, okay? And apparently it's a thing. And I did not know that you can shove it up in there. I thought the hole was very small. I didn't know that, guys, it expands that much, right? That's a thing that people do. Okay, so this article is a little bit misleading, right? So I actually looked it up. I think this is the one. Yeah, so there's a case report, like a medical case report. Let's read this, okay? It says the insertion of a foreign body into the urethra is a delicate matter that may prevent patients from presenting promptly. It can have serious long-term implications. Yeah, no shit. Here we describe the case of a 15-year-old boy who self-inserted a USB wire into his urethra. Okay. At first I read this and I was like, wait, how do you do that? How do you do that? It's way too big, right? Do you just plug it? Like, which side do you put it in? Do you put it in? I guess you would put it in the small side, right? The smaller side. No, but what he did was, no, he didn't put in the actual ends, right? So he had the cable, right, in the middle, right? He bent it. So here's the cable. He bent it in the middle, and he shoved it in that way. So the ends were sticking out at the end, sticking out of his penis. Okay. Yeah, it's some UK kid. So I don't know. I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know it could stretch that much. So listen. So 15-year-old male patient was transferred to our department from his local hospital following a self-insertion of the knotted cable of a USB wire. His repeated failed attempts to remove the cable shortly after its insertion resulted in gross hematuria. I'm guessing that means bleeding. And he presented to the emergency department, blah, 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 blah. And they couldn't take it out. It was unsuccessful. So what happened was he inserted it, right? And he inserted a lot, like a lot. So much that the inside was knotted. It became like a knot. Okay? And he couldn't pull it back out. He tried to pull it back out. He couldn't pull it back out, right? He only went to the emergency room after he started bleeding. He started peeing blood. Okay? So he goes to the emergency room. And they can't take it out because there's a knot in the middle. Okay? And here it is. I hope this is okay to show. All right, let's just show it a little bit. Yeah, there's a knot in the middle, like inside. So he couldn't pull it out. All right? And oh yeah, here's the thing afterwards. Ew. All right, let's go past that. There's a thing. I think he also said, I read it somewhere, that let's see. Yeah, so he says, following his request to be examined without his mother, so he didn't want his mother there, he confessed that he inserted the cable into his urethra to measure the length of his penis, triggered by sexual curiosity. So you may be saying, wait, what does that mean? How do you why would you measure the length of your penis that way? Well, you don't, right? Obviously, he's just embarrassed, and that's the excuse that he gave, right? Yeah. So the freaking headline of this article, says that it's a backfired attempt to measure length. That's wrong, right? He wasn't measuring length. It was a sexual thing. Right. How did it get itself all tangled up? I guess when you push it in, it's like cords, right? Cords naturally get tangled. You ever like put earbuds or earphones in your pocket and then you walked around afterwards? You take it out, it's all knotted, right? That's probably what happened. And he couldn't pull it back out. Luckily for this kid, they got it out okay. I think they made an incision somehow, and they cut the cord and they pulled it out. So he's fine, apparently. Apparently he's okay. All right. Just a little embarrassed. Yeah. So that's called sounding, when you insert things up in there, right? Which I just learned about yesterday when I read this article. It's so interesting. I never knew that it could stretch that much. Jesus Christ. So I was reading up on this, and then I found another article. Let's see. USB stuck. No, not USB. It was a man stuck charging cable. Okay, this is a even worse article. Okay. So that was a 15-year-old kid. And it's fine, right? He's a 15-year-old kid. He's young. He didn't know any better. This is an older man, right? It's a man put a cell phone charger up his penis. It got stuck in his bladder and had to be removed. This is the last article. It's fine. Just the last article. Okay, just indulge me on this. So an Indian man who went to the hospital with an abdominal pain had inserted a mobile phone charger cable into his penis. A doctor who treated him told CNN on Monday. This was in India. So he goes to the hospital. He claims that he had ingested some earphones. So he lied, okay? All right? PSA, never lie to your doctor, okay? They're going to find out, okay? There's no reason to lie to your doctor. They're not going to tell anyone. They're not going to reveal your name. So if you lie to your doctor, what can happen is they can prescribe cures, or they can prescribe treatments that are not correct, which is what happened in this case. So they gave him laxatives, and obviously to poop it out, right? Obviously it didn't work. So the cord didn't appear. So it says, but when the cord didn't appear, despite the patient being prescribed laxatives, doctors resorted to surgery. Right. So they prescribed him laxatives and they told him to go home. So after 5 days and he pooped a couple of times, the cable still did not come out. Well, of course. And this guy must know this unless he thinks that, like, he knows that he put it up his penis, right? So he must know that laxatives wouldn't work. So why did he just accept that treatment and then went home and tried to do it? Unless he thought that, like, he didn't know. And he thought that, like, anything that goes up inside your body ends up in the same place. And then you just poop it out. I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. It's so weird. So afterwards, after 5 days, he comes back. And then the doctor says, we then conducted an endoscopy, but still couldn't find anything. As the patient complained of severe pain, we decided to perform surgery and found that there was nothing in his intestine. I don't know why they didn't x-ray him before. I feel like before the surgery, they should have x-rayed him to see if there's actually anything in there. But anyways, they performed surgery and it wasn't in there. Of course, because he told them he ingested earphones. It was at that point that an x-ray revealed the man to have a 2-foot-long charging cable in his bladder, inserted via his urethra, the tube that leads from the penis to the bladder, and then took it out. Yeah, he was fine. Yeah, here's the thing. Holy shit. Anyways. Yeah, that was weird. I didn't know that you could do that. So the lesson of the story is don't lie to your doctor. And if you're going to try something sexually, just like do it in a safe way. Like research first, okay? Yeah, shouldn't they have x-rayed first? It makes no sense. That's true. But the doctor did tell CNN. Well, your doctor is not going to reveal your name, right? So in that CNN article, he didn't. Like, we didn't know who the man was. So don't lie to your doctor. You got to tell them everything. Like, they're going to find out sooner or later. So you might as well just tell the truth. You were not expecting this story? Oh, yeah. Well, that's what you got. A CT scan would have been more precise than an X-ray? Oh, okay. What's the CT scan? And what's an X-ray? What's the difference? Anyways. Yeah. That's what I read the other day. How are you guys doing? All right. Before we get started, maybe they trusted the patient was telling the truth. Well, I don't know. Of course they did. Yeah. Maybe they shouldn't. Like maybe like in those cases, like in sexual cases, maybe you shouldn't trust the that the patient is telling the truth because most of the time they're probably embarrassed and they wouldn't tell you. Like I heard that a very common issue that people that go to the emergency room have is like they stick things up their butts, like random things, and they'll tell like the craziest excuses, like oh my god, I was on a ladder and putting up curtains or something, and then I fell on my light bulb or something. You know, they make up like crazy stories. Like, wait, what do you mean? What are you doing? Like, what were you doing putting on curtains? Like, were you naked? Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, they would make up crazy stories. But we know what happened. We all know what happened. So don't lie to your doctors. How did I come up with my channel name? Oh, my name is Lin. So Lin plus infamy equals Linfamy. Yeah. I didn't think that hard about it. It was just a thing. Okay. I didn't expect the channel to become like a big channel. It was just a hobby I was doing. So yeah. I didn't really think that much about the name. And now it's stuck. Oh well. So a CT scan is just a multiple X-rays then? So it's just like a bunch of X-rays? Okay. All right, I have a snack. Like, look at this. It's pizza sticks. All right, I hope this is good. Here you go. Oh, okay. It's just a stick so far. Oh my god. I taste pepperoni, cheese, and tomato sauce. Marinara sauce. Oh, it's pretty good. It does taste like pizza. 8 out of 10. Oh my god. CT scan can show the difference between intestines and bladder. In an X-ray, you just watch a picture. Oh. But a CT scan is multiple X-rays, right? So I guess they take a bunch of X-rays and then they put it through the computer and do some algorithms to make you see like the intestines and the bladder and stuff like that. Don't stick those up my urethra. Okay. Thanks, Bigfoot. Yeah. I don't think these will fit up my dick. Like, but maybe. Well, this is thinner than a USB cable, right? Holy shit. I don't know. Yeah, you don't want something hard. Like it might break and then you're in a whole load of trouble. Okay. All right, so what happened last week in our story? Moving on from the USB thing. So, last chapter, Ling Hu Chong, our hero, he's sad because he's starting to realize how scheming and manipulative his master is. Okay, so he's pretty sad. He's kind of emo. They're in the Hangshan school, and something weird has been happening. Someone has been tying people up, right? They're tying people up onto trees and attaching weird messages on them, saying like the plot has been defeated or something like that. And this person who's been tying people up must be really strong because the people that the person is tying up are actually like really strong fighters. So this guy who's tying them up must be a really strong fighter too. They even tied up Monk No Commandment, who's really strong, and they stuck one message on him that says that calls him the #1 most perverted man. And it seems weird because Monk No Commandment is not perverted at all, it seems. So, and the thing is, the Monk No Commandment, he's not even that mad. He's actually sad, and so he seems to be sad and he seems to agree with the message. And he also he's so sad that he tries to commit suicide by hanging himself on a tree. Luckily, his daughter Yilin saves him. And then Ling Hu Chong dresses up like a mute granny, like in disguise. So there's this one mute granny, this granny who couldn't talk, that did chores in the temple. So he dresses up like her And Yilin mistakes him for her, and she starts talking to him. Turns out that she talks to this granny a lot because she's shy and she doesn't like to express her emotions. But to a granny who can't talk, she feels more comfortable, right? So she talks to this person a lot. She mistakes Ling Huchong for this granny, and she talks to him. She tells him this story long ago about her father, monk no commandment. One day her father was carrying her, and then he got into an argument with some lady, and they got into a fight. Now the lady yells that he sexually harassed her, and the monk's wife hears this, and she gets mad and she leaves. So, and she also leaves him a note calling him a heartless and perverted man. So monk no commandment afterwards, he tries to go find his wife. So he leaves Yilin in the care of the Hangshan school while he goes around trying to find his wife. And that's what happened last week. Not much, but we get to hear a little bit more about the history of Monk No Commandment and Yilin. All right. Dum, 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 dum. Okay. You ready? You ready? Ready? Last chapter was sad. Why? All right. Chapter 37, Forcing Marriage, Part 2. Yilin said, "These days, martial sisters Yihu and Yiqing always supervise me practicing sword. Little martial sister Qin Chuan said to me she once heard Yihu and Yiqing and a few other senior martial sisters talk with each other. They said big brother Linghu won't agree to be the Hangshan school's headmaster in the future. Yue Buchun is the person who killed our masters, so we naturally can't join the Five Mountains School and accept him as our headmaster. That's why everyone asked me to become the headmaster." Everyone wants Yilin to become the headmaster. Why? "Mute Granny, I don't believe this at all, but Martial Sister Qin swore on it and said that none of it is fake. She said a few of the senior martial sisters said, from all the nuns of the Hangshan School's Yi generation, Big Brother Linghu treats me the best. If I become the headmaster, it will definitely fit the best with Big Brother Linghu's wish. So they decided to elect me because of Big Brother Linghu. They all hope I practice my swordplay well and kill Yue Buchun." Okay, well, I don't think at this point she's gonna be able to kill Yue Buchun. "37 in a row? What do you mean?" We're at chapter 37. That's where we are. "Then I'll become Hangshan School's headmaster." No one objected to this. When she explained it like that, I believed her. But how can I become the headmaster of the Hangshan School? My sword art wouldn't be as good as martial sisters Yihe and Yiqing even after I've practiced it for 10 more years. As for killing Yue Buchun, it's even more impossible. I was already confused in the beginning, so when I thought of this, my mind is even more chaos. Is in even more chaos. Mute Granny, what do you think I should do?" Ling Huchong had now understood. So they supervised her practicing sword from day to night, hoping that she would take my position later on and become the Hangshan School's headmaster. This is very good for me, since they've thought about this so thoroughly. Really? Isn't he worried that Yilin would die by the hands of Yue Buchun? Yilin quietly said, Mute Granny, I often tell you I think of Big Brother Ling Hu during the day, and I also think of him during the night. Even my dreams are of him. I dreamt of him saving me and not even caring for his own life. Dreamt of him after he was injured, and I carried him to run away. Dreamt of him jesting to me and wanting me to help him wanting me to tell him some stories. Dreamt of him in Hangshan at that jade house. I I slept on the same bed with him, sharing the same quilt. Mute Granny, I know you can't hear me. That's why I'm not shy to talk to you of these things. If I don't say these things and always keep them in my heart, I'll go mad. I talk to you of these things, and I just lightly call out Big Brother Ling Hu's name. Then my heart will be at peace for a few days. She stopped for a time, then lightly called out, Big Brother Ling Hu! Big Brother Ling Hu! Oh my god. I can't do a voice that pathetic. Big Brother Ling Hu! These two cries contained the deep lovesick emotions she felt. Ling Hu Chong could not help tremble when he heard them. He already knew this little martial sister treated him very nicely, but he never thought she would have such a deep feeling toward him. He thought, she treats me so passionately. How can Ling Hu Chong repay this to her in this life? Ling Hu Chong has a pattern, right? He's like, oh, well, if this person loves me so much, like I must do something for them. But then you don't have to. But he's such a good dude. But no, she's not talking about her brother. This is like, it's like they're in the same clan, so they call them like brothers and sisters, but they're not. They're like martial brothers. He's not her actual biological brother. Yilin lightly sighed. Mute Granny, Dad doesn't understand me. Martial sister Yihu and Yi Qing, they also don't understand me. I thought of Big Brother Ling Hu only because I could not forget him. I know this is unseemly. I've already entered Buddhism and have become a nun, so how can I think of a man night and day? Moreover, he is our school's current headmaster. Every day I ask for Guan Yin to help me. I ask for Buddha to help me forget Big Brother Ling Hu. When I was reading scripture early this morning, I read of the Buddha's name who helped the people in the world, so I asked the Buddha in my heart to protect Big Brother Ling Hu from harm, to turn trouble into luck, to bless him and young Lady Run, to make a blessed match and help and keep each other company till they're old, and to be happy for all their life. I suddenly thought, why did I make so many wishes to Buddha? When Buddha hears them, wouldn't Buddha feel annoyed? So from today onwards, I'll only pray to Buddha to bless Big Brother Ling Hu's life with carefree. There's a little grammar issue there. He loves to be carefree with no restraint or control, but hoping that young Lady Run doesn't control him in the future. She was quiet for a little while before slowly continuing. We believe in the goddess of mercy who helps the people around the world. After reciting more than 10 phrases, she raised her head and gazed at the moon and said, I must go back. You should go back too. From inside her bosom, she took out 2 buns and put them in Ling Hu Chong's hand. Mute Granny, why didn't you look for me today? Are you sick? After a time, looking that Ling Hu Chong was not answering, she spoke to herself. You also can't hear, but I keep on asking you. I'm really foolish. Oh, nice. He stayed quiet because he knows that he's not supposed to be hearing her. Oh, if I was Ling Hu Chong, I would have made the mistake right there. I would have talked. She slowly turned around and went. Ling Hu Chong, sitting on the rock, looked at her disappearing into the darkness. Every sentence that she just told him was still flowing around his mind, stirring his heart, making it difficult for him to think, and he could not help feeling sentimental. After some time, he incidentally took a glance at the water in the creek, and he was startled. He saw that there were 2 reflections sitting side by side on the rock. He thought it was just a trick his eyes were playing because of the way the water rippled, but after taking another look, There were really two reflections. All of a sudden, his back was covered in cold sweat, and his whole body became stiff. How would he dare to turn his head around? From looking at the reflection on the water, that person was sitting just 2 feet away behind his back, and with only one hit, that person would have been able to take his life. But in his shock, he did not move forward. This person had silently come to his back without him feeling anything. It was very difficult to say how high exactly this person's martial art was. A thought flashed in his mind: ghost! But thinking of ghost, his heart became even more frightened. After being stupefied for a long time, he took a look at the water again. The creek water was flowing, and under the moonlight, he could not see clearly the reflection on the water. But he saw the two reflections were identical to each other, and both were wearing the wide gowns of women. Even the buns on top of their hair were the same. The other person was just like his own incarnation. Ling Huchang was even more frightened now that even his heart had seemed to skip a beat. Suddenly, without knowing where the courage came from, he abruptly turned his head around to face that ghost. After looking clearly, he could not help drawing a breath of cold air. He saw a middle-aged woman and recognized her to be the deaf and mute servant on that hanging temple. But it was really strange that he was unaware of her arriving behind him. Okay, so remember, he disguised himself as a mute granny, and he actually met the actual mute granny. So this is the real mute granny. As his fear subsided, his astonishment was not reduced in the slightest bit. He said, "Mute granny, so it's you. You've really scared me to death." But he heard his own voice was trembling and hoarse. He then saw the hairpin on the mute granny's bun and the light gray gown she was wearing. They were all unexpectedly completely the same as to what he was wearing. You think is Ying Ying, Lady Koi? We'll see. They were all unexpected. Well, he paused for a tick and then laughed loudly and said, "Don't be offended. Young Lady Run remembered really well. She remembered that what you were wearing and dressed me up like this. We're just like twin sisters." He saw the wooden expression of mute granny. There was not a trace of anger or happiness. He did not know what she was thinking about, so he pondered. This person is really weird. Since she already saw me disguising as herself, I shouldn't stay here any longer. He immediately stood up and folded his hands towards the mute granny. The night is late, so I'm going to take my leave." He turned around towards the road to go away. Just as he walked for only 7 to 8 steps, he saw the mute granny blocking the road in front of him. He did not know how she moved, but she had moved noiselessly, without a trace or a shadow in front of him. When he was fighting the lightning-quick and unbelievably fast Dongfang Bubai, he was still able to see his shape and form. But this mute granny was just like she sprouted out of the ground. Even though her movement was not as quick as Dongfang Bubai, her noiseless movement was like that of ghosts. Ling Huchang was greatly astonished as he knew that tonight he had met a master. He had disguised himself as her without asking for her permission, so of course it was unavoidable that she would be angry. He again saluted her deeply and said, "Granny, I've offended you. I'll immediately change my clothing. Then I'll come to the hanging temple to apologize." That mute granny still wore her wooden expression and was not showing the slightest sign of anger on her face. "Oh yes," Ling Huchang exclaimed. "You can't hear what I'm saying." Then he stooped down to write on the ground. "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." When he stood back up, he saw that she was still standing there, expressionless, without giving a glance at the words written on the ground. Ling Huchang pointed at the words written on the ground and said in a loud voice, "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." That mute granny didn't even move a muscle. Ling Huchang bowed to her continuously with his hands folded. At the same time, he was undoing his clothing and his hair, but that granny stayed quiet without saying a single word for the whole time. Ling Huchong did not know what to do anymore as he scratched his head. You don't understand. I don't know what else to do. He leaned to one side as he tried to go around her, but as soon as his left foot moved, that granny moved slightly to block his way. Ling Huchong sucked in a breath and said, "Sorry for the offense," as he strode to the right, and all of a sudden he stepped back and flew past from the left. Just as his left foot touched the ground, that granny was already in front of him, blocking his way forward again. He tried to run away a few more times, and each time he was getting faster and faster, but that granny kept up with him and blocked his way forward the entire time. Now he was feeling worried. He extended his left hand to push out at her shoulder. That granny chopped down with the right palm, aiming at his right wrist. Ling Huchong hastily withdrew the hand. He knew that he was at a disadvantage, so he didn't dare to fight with her. The only thing he hoped for was to get away as quickly as possible, so he lowered his head to charge at the side of her body. But he had just shaped to move when he suddenly felt the wind from her palm strike. That granny had already sent her palm towards the top of his head. Ling Huchong quickly dodged by slanting his body to one side, but this palm strike was very quick, and with a clap, his shoulder was hit. That granny also faltered as she hit him. This was because Ling Huchong's art of essence absorbing had reacted in response to the strike, and it had actually absorbed the power in that palm strike. The granny hastily extended her left hand in a claw, which was looking thin and sharp at his eyes. Do you think she just wants food? But she's mute, so she can't say anything? Oh, just a big misunderstanding. Ling Huchong was greatly startled as he quickly lowered his head to avoid it. A moment later, the clothes at his back was ripped. Fortunately, that granny was also afraid of his art of essence absorbing, so she did not make use of that advantage to hit him. She bent her right arm, and in an uppercut, she again tried to dig his eyes out. It was obvious she had come with a plan to attack his eyes only, because no matter how formidable his art of essence absorbing was, once her fingers entered his eyes, he would still be blinded. Besides, the soft eyes would also not be able to absorb other people's internal power. Ling Huchong extended his arm to block the strike. That granny followed it by turning her palm around and used her 5 fingers to grab at his left eye. Ling Huchong hastily extended his left hand to block, but that granny's right hand had flown out to grab at his right ear. He leapt away quickly. Each move was strange and peculiar, and they seemed like the movements that a farm woman might use to fight someone. But these movements were fiercer and faster. In the next few moves, Ling Huchong had been forced to retreat continuously. The granny's martial art was actually not that high. She was merely able to walk silently and did a sneak attack rapidly. In reality, her martial art was far inferior to Yue Buchun, Zhuo Langchan, and even Ying Ying's martial art was much higher than hers. But Ling Huchong's punching and kicking martial arts were very lacking. If it was not for the fact that the granny was protecting herself from his art of essence absorbing and did not dare to clash with his arms and legs, Ling Huchong would have been hit a long time ago. After a few more moves, Ling Huchong knew it would be hard to escape if he did not draw his sword out. He immediately put his hand inside his bosom to take his short sword out. His right hand had just touched the handle of the sword when the granny executed her lightning-quick attacks. In the subsequent 7 to 8 attacks, Ling Huchong had to block with both of his hands and had no time to draw the sword. That granny's attacks were getting fiercer and more violent. There was clearly no enmity or hatred between them, but it was obvious she really wanted to dig his eyes out. She didn't have a problem with him. She just wanted to poke his eyes out. While he again put his right hand into his bosom to take the sword out. Disregarding the hit he took from her palm and kick, he finally managed to grab the short sword. At this moment, his head was hurting as his hair was grabbed, and both his feet were lifted off the ground. The next moment, the sky was revolving and the ground was spinning as his body was being flung around in midair. The granny had grabbed his hair in order to fling him away. So he was now being spun around quicker and quicker. "Oi! Oi!" Ling Huchong worriedly called out. "What are you doing?" He flung his arms out, trying to grab her arms. Suddenly, his left and right armpits felt numb, as the acupoints there were sealed by her. Next, the acupoints on his back, the back of his waist, chest, and neck were all sealed. His entire body now felt numb, and he was completely immobilized. But the granny still did not stop whirling his body around. Now, Ling Wuchang could only hear the whirring sound of the wind, and he thought, I've met with countless marvels in my life, but I've never been made into a big top for someone to play before. The granny spun him around until he was feeling very dizzy. She finally stopped, and he let him fall heavily on the ground. Ling Wuchang, of course, knew there was no enmity between him and that granny, but when at this time she toyed with him until he was half dead, he couldn't help feeling angry. He scolded, Stinky granny! You don't know what's good for you. If I'd gotten my sword out, you'd have a body full of holes a long time ago. That granny looked at him with her cold eyes. Her face remained expressionless, with no trace of happiness or anger at all. Ling Wuchang thought, I can't beat her, but if I don't scold her, then my loss would be too great. But I've been subdued by her now, so if she knows I was scolding her, then she'll make things difficult for me. He immediately thought of an idea to prevent the granny from knowing that he was scolding her. He started giggling and scolded. Bastard granny, stinky granny, the gods know your heart is bad. That's why they made you deaf and mute, can't smile, and can't get angry. You're just like an idiot. Might as well become a dog or a pig. They might even be better than you. His scolding was becoming more and more malicious, while his face was grinning from ear to ear. At first, his smile was just fake to prevent the granny from knowing that he was scolding her. But at the end, after looking at the granny's expressionless face, he considered his plan had succeeded, so he couldn't help feeling proud of himself. He was now laughing heartily. She's a spider? She's a spider in disguise? Okay. That granny slowly walked up to his side, grabbed his hair, and dragged him along the ground. Her pace gradually became faster. Although Ling Wuchang's acupoints had been sealed, he had not lost consciousness. His entire body was aching from the friction and the collision from the ground. His mouth was continuously scolding, but he could not laugh any more. That granny was dragging him along the path going up the mountain. Ling Wuchang took a look at the lay of the land from the corner of his eyes. He saw her turning westward, and she was actually going to the Hanging Temple. At this time, Ling Wuchang had already guessed that Monk No Commandment, Tian Bo Guang, Bear Duo of the Northern Desert, Chiu Song Nian, and the rest of those people were most likely subdued by her. Besides her, there was no one else who could do those strange and sudden movements, which the gods don't know and the ghosts can't feel, to suddenly subdue people. But he had once gone to the Hanging Temple and had seen it with his own eyes that this mute and deaf granny had no senses, and could even be said to be slow-witted. Even masters like Great Master Fang Zhang, Priest Chongshu, Ying Ying, and Shang Guanyun did not suspect her when they saw her. This mute granny was really very good in concealing her martial ability. His thought continued. If this granny hangs me up high on the Gongsun tree at the Tongyuan Valley, then put a paper on me that says I'm the world's #1 pervert, I'd lose a lot of face, since I'm acting as the Hangshan School's headmaster, and I'm also wearing a woman's gown. Lucky she's dragging me to the Hanging Temple instead. I guess it doesn't matter if she just hangs me there for some time, and not out in the open. Even though he had suffered a bad luck tonight, he was not going to be hung high above the Hangshan other courtyard. So he still considered it to be one lucky thing from this big disaster he was facing. He also thought, I wonder if she knows my real identity. Would she give me special treatment if she knows that I'm the headmaster of Hangshan? Along the road up, his body bumped against countless numbers of rocks, causing a lot of injuries. Luckily, his face was facing up, so there was no injury to his 5 senses. When they arrived at the Hanging Temple, the granny dragged him straight up to the highest chamber of the Spirit Turtle Pavilion. Aiyo, this is bad, Ling Wuchang called out. Outside the chamber of the Spirit Turtle was the flying bridge, which was looking down at a 10,000 feet deep abyss. He was afraid that the granny was going to hang him there. This hanging temple was rarely visited by people. If this granny hanged him there, it would be unavoidable that he'd starve to death. This turn of event was far from good. The granny released him in the middle of the chamber. Then she went below. Ling Hucheng was lying down on the floor, thinking of the background of this despicable granny. He unexpectedly couldn't think of any clue regarding her origins at all, but he conjectured that she must be a famous senior of the Hangshan school, someone like Yu Sao, who probably attended people like Ding Jing and Ding Xian Shu Tai back then. As he thought till here, he felt relieved. Since I'm the headmaster of Hangshan, whatever anger she has towards me, she won't give me too much difficulty. But as he mulled over it, he thought, I've already disguised myself like this. I'm afraid she won't recognize me. If she thought I was in collusion with Madame Zhang, deliberately dressing up like her and sneaking around in Hangshan, she'll definitely give me something special and make me suffer even more. What a disaster. He didn't hear the footsteps going up the stairs as that granny came back up. In her hand was a rope to tie Ling Hucheng's hands and feet. She then took out a piece of yellow paper out of her bosom and stuck it on his neck. Ling Hucheng was really curious to see what was written on that paper, but at this time both of his eyes were blinded as a black cloth was put over them. Ling Hucheng was thinking, this granny is quite smart. She knows I'd want to look at that paper, but she's not giving me a look. He also thought, Ling Hucheng is a world's famous loafer, and the words written on that paper must be something awful. I don't need to see them to know what they are. He felt his wrists and ankles tightened as his body soared up high into the air. Now he was hanging up high from the beam. This fueled his anger even more, and he started hurling abuses. He always loved to play around, but he was actually also very careful. His heart pondered, I would never be able to escape, no matter how much I swear at her. I must slowly move my inner energy to break through the acupoints, and wait till I get my sword. Then I'll stop her. Then I'll hang her up, and hang that paper on her neck. What should I write on that paper? World's #1 evil granny. Not good calling her world's #1. She might get happy instead. I'll write world's number 18 evil granny. Let her rack her brain figuring out who those 17 evil grannies in front of her are. He turned his head to a side to listen, but he couldn't hear any breathing at all. That granny had gone down the chamber. Conjectured mean like make a hypothesis, like guess. Took a guess. Where's conjectured? But he conjectured, yeah, so he took a guess. I will verify that for you. Conjecture. Yeah, form an opinion about something on the basis of incomplete information, guess, speculate, surmise, infer. After hanging up there for 2 hours, Ling Hucheng became hungry, and his stomach started growling in protest, but he was secretly happy as he had gradually broken through his blocked acupoints. Suddenly his body swayed, and he fell on the floor with a booming sound. It was that granny who had loosened the ropes tying him up, but he couldn't perceive at all when she had come back. That granny pulled open his blindfold. However, he had not broken through the acupoint on his neck. So he couldn't look down to see what was written on that paper. But he could see the last word written on that paper was the character Granny. He quietly called out, "This is bad." In his heart, he was thinking that this Granny character she had written must be because she thought he was a woman. If she had written that he was a pervert or a loafer, it did not matter, but to regard him as a woman, then it was a really big concern for him. He saw that Granny took a bowl from the table, and he thought, is she giving me soup or water to drink? It's best if she's giving me wine. All of a sudden, his whole head was warm as he cried out, "Hey yo!" That bowl was filled with hot water, which was now dripping from his head. Ling Huchong scolded, "Stinking granny, what are you doing?" Ling Huchong was greatly startled when he saw her take out a razor from her bosom. The next moment, he heard scraping sound, and his scalp hurt a little. That granny was actually shaving his head. Ling Huchong was alarmed and angry. He didn't know what this crazy granny was up to. Not long after, the hair on his entire head was shaved clean, and he thought, "Oh well, Ling Huchong will become a monk from today. Hey yo, that's not right. I'm wearing a woman's dress, so I'm going to become a nun." His heart suddenly trembled, and he thought, Ying Ying was joking that I should disguise as a nun. If that prophecy becomes reality, then it'll be a big disaster. Maybe this evil granny already knows who I am, and she believes that a man becoming Hangshan School's headmaster is very inappropriate. She might not even just shave my head. She might even castrate me, so I'll become just like cannot have no commandment. That way, I won't be able to dirty the sacred ground of Buddha. This woman is also insanely loyal to Hangshan. She's even willing to do anything. Ay yo, today, today, Ling Huchong has met with a big misfortune. To dominate Wulin, scatter your sword and castrate yourself. It's best if I don't learn that evil resisting sword art. She shaved him. Oh my god. What the hell? What is she doing? That granny took down the paper on his neck and put it to the side. Ling Huchong took a look and saw that the words were written on. He saw what the words written on the paper were. World's #1 blind man. Not male, not female. Evil granny. He secretly cried out in misery. So, this granny is pretending to be deaf and mute. She actually heard everything. If not, how could she have known Monk No Commandment calling me the world's #1 blind man? She was probably eavesdropping when Monk No Commandment was talking to his daughter, or maybe when Yilin was talking to me. She might even be eavesdropping on both times. He cried out, "No need to pretend anymore, you're not deaf." But the granny was still not paying him any attention as she opened up his gown. Ling Huchong was startled, and he called out, "What are you doing?" A ripping sound was heard. The granny had torn apart the female gown he was wearing into two and taken it down. Ling Huchong called out in alarm, "If you injure a hair on my body, I'll make mincemeat out of you." Then he thought, she's only shaven my whole head, but how can she stop only at that? The granny took a small piece of grindstone, wet it, and sharpened her razor. She extended her finger to test out the razor's edge. Satisfied with its sharpness, she put it aside and took out a porcelain bottle from her bosom. On the bottle was written "Heavenly Connecting Glue." When Ling Huchong was injured, he had used Hangshan School's medicine countless times, so he recognized the bottle without having to look at the writing on it. Oh shit. What do you think is going to happen? I think it's pretty clear what's going to happen. He also knew the other medicine called White Cloud Bear Gallbladder Pill, which was used to treat internal energy. Sure enough, that granny took out another porcelain bottle from her bosom, and it was the White Cloud Bear Gallbladder Pill. That granny then took out some white claws from inside her bosom, which were actually bandages. Ling Huchong's old wounds were already healed, and he had no other new injuries. The way this granny had arranged everything, it seemed that she was going to make 1 or 2 new injuries on his body. He couldn't help sighing in misery. Once the granny finished her preparation, she gazed at Ling Huchong. After a while, she lifted his body and put him on top of a table. Her expression was wooden once again. Ling Huchong had undergone many battles, and even when his body got heavily injured, or when he was surrounded by powerful enemies, he was never afraid. But at this time, when facing an old granny, he actually felt unspeakable fear in his heart. And then the old granny took out a phone charging cable. Oh no! Oh no! He's gonna end up on CNN. This is terrible. She's got a lot of things hidden in her bra. The granny slowly picked up the razor. Light glinted off the face of it. Ling Huchong's forehead was covered in cold perspiration, which dripped down onto his gown. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind, and without thinking, he blurted out, "You're Monk No Commandment's wife!" That granny trembled and took a step back. How do you know? Her voice was dry and grating. She paused after every word, just like a kid who has just learnt to utter his first words. When Ling Huchong said that, he had not thought of what he was saying. Now that she was asking him, he was asking himself how he knew. He coldly snorted. Of course I know. I knew about it a long time ago. But in his heart, he was thinking quickly, how did I know? How did I know? Oh, the paper she hanged on Monk No Commandment had the words, "World's #1 heartless, perverted, and lascivious man." This heartless and perverted and lascivious criticism, besides Monk No Commandment, the only other person who would know about it would be his own wife. He then loudly said, "You still care so much for that heartless, perverted, and lascivious man? Otherwise, when he hanged himself, why did you cut off the rope? When he wanted to cut his throat, why did you take away his saber? With this kind of heartless, perverted, and lascivious man, isn't it better to just let him die?" That granny coldly replied, "Let him die? So fast? How can it be that easy for him?" That's right, Ling Huchong replied, letting him be worried for these last 15 years, searching for you from the past all the way to Tibet, from the northern desert to the western region, searching for you in every single nunnery. But you're actually hiding here, enjoying life. That can be regarded as not easy for him. He deserves it, that granny answered. He's already taken me as his wife. Why did he flirt with other women? Who said he was flirting? Ling Huchong inquired. She was looking at your daughter, and he was looking at her. What's wrong with that? Once you're married, looking at other women is not permitted, the granny retorted. Ling Huchong felt that this woman was very unreasonable, so he argued. You're already married. Why are you looking at other men? When did I look at other men? That granny angrily replied. Nonsense. Aren't you looking at me now? Am I not a man? Ling Huchong replied. Monk No Commandments only looked at some women, but you actually shaved my head off and touched it. Let me tell you, we're not related, but you actually touched my skin and violated the rules and regulations. Luckily, you only touched my head and didn't touch my face. Otherwise, Guan Yin will definitely not spare you. He was thinking that this woman rarely went out into the real world, so she wouldn't understand about worldly matters. So he was trying to scare her off to avoid being cut up by her. I don't need to touch you to cut off your arms, legs, and head, the granny replied. Want to behead me? By all means, do as you please. The granny coldly laughed. You want me to kill you? It's not as easy as that. You now have two choices in front of you. You can choose for yourself. The first choice is for you to quickly take Yilin as your wife and stop breaking her heart. If you don't agree, then I'm going to castrate you and make you become not male, not female weirdo. If you don't take Yilin as your wife, then you can't marry another shameless and bad woman. She had been pretending to be deaf and mute for more than 10 years already, and had not spoken for a long time. That was why her tongue wasn't fluid in the beginning, but after talking for some time, her speech was now fluent. Okay, so she's Yilin's mother. Okay. And she just wants him to marry her. Yilin is definitely a good lady, but does that make all the other ladies in this world to be shameless? To be a shameless and bad woman? Ling Hucheng required. Not far off. Good is good, no matter where they go. So, do you agree or not? Quickly, say it. Little Marshall's sister Yilin is my good friend. If she finds out you're forcing me like this, she'll be angry. She'll be very happy once you've taken her as your wife, that Granny said. All her anger would be gone. She's a Buddhist, and she's already sworn not to get married, Ling Hucheng argued. Once she's moved by worldly desires, she'll be blamed by Buddha. If you become a monk, Buddha won't blame her alone. Do you think I shaved your head for nothing? Ling Hucheng couldn't help laughing out loud. So you shaved my head, wanting me to become a monk and take a nun as my wife? Your husband did this before, so you want me to learn from him. That's right, she answered. There are so many bald-headed people in this world, Ling Hucheng laughingly said. It doesn't mean you're a monk when your head is shaved. That can be easily fixed, the granny replied. I'll just burn some incense marking on your head. A bald head doesn't mean you're a monk, but a bald head with some incense marking it is definitely a monk. As she finished talking, she immediately wanted to take some action. She immediately wanted to take action. So if you didn't know, like monks can put use an incense stick and like put it on their heads and make dots on their heads. I think we can find a picture, right? Buddhist monks with, I don't know what they're called, with dots on it. Yeah, like Krillin. There you go. There you go. You think this lady's plan is pretty good? Really? I don't know about that. Slow down, Ling Hucheng hastily interrupted. To become a monk requires the person's willingness. How can it be forced? You don't want to become a monk, the granny concluded. Then be a eunuch. Ling Hucheng thought, this granny is insane. She must get whatever she wants. I must delay her first. He said, if I suddenly changed my mind to marry little Marshall's sister Yilin after you made me a eunuch, what happens then? Wouldn't you have harmed the two of us then? For us Marshall people, we do things openly and quickly, that granny angrily said. Once you said that you want what you want to do, how can you still be in two minds or change your mind? A monk, then be a monk, then be a monk. A eunuch, then be a eunuch. How can a gentleman be so loathsome? Once I'm a eunuch, I'm not a gentleman anymore, Ling Hucheng laughingly said. We're discussing a serious matter here, that granny angrily replied. Who's joking around with you? Ling Hucheng thought, little Marshall's sister Yilin is beautiful and gentle, and she also has a deep feeling towards me. But my heart has belonged to Ying Ying a long time ago, so how can I just forget about that? This granny is so unreasonable. A gentleman would rather die than bend. So he said, Granny, I want to ask you something. What do you think of a man who's not loyal to his lover and plays around with women all the time? Why do you even need to ask? That granny questioned. This sort of person is worse than a pig, a dog, a useless and selfish man. You're right, Ling Hucheng agreed. Little Marshall's sister Yilin is beautiful, and she treats me very nicely. But why didn't I take her as my wife? It's because I've already had a marriage agreement with another lady a long time ago. This lady treats me so kindly. All right, Ling Hucheng would just give you his body for you to chop up, but I won't disappoint her. If I disappoint her, won't I become the world's #1 heartless perverted and lascivious man, then Ling Hu Chong would have taken Monk No Commandments' title of world's #1. This lady, she's the devil sex's young lady Ren. She was the one who saved you when you were surrounded by the devil sect here on that day, is that right? The granny asked. That's right, Ling Hu Chong answered. You've seen this young lady Ren. That's very easy, the granny said. I'll just ask young lady to dump you. Then you can say that she was as heartless. Well, then you can say that she was heartless towards you, not you being heartless towards her. That's settled then. She would never dump me. Oh, he's very confident. Ling Hu Chong said. She's willing to give her life for me. I'm also willing to give my life for her. I'll never be heartless towards her, and she'll never be heartless towards me either. I'm afraid matter has come to a head, and it's not up to her, that granny said. Hangshan other courtyard is full of those stinking men. She can pick any one of them and marry him. Nonsense, Ling Hu Chong angrily shouted. You're saying I can't do that? The granny asked as she walked out the door. He heard the door to the next chamber opened, and that granny came back in again. She was carrying a woman with both her hands and legs tied. That woman was Ying Ying. Oh, she got this all planned out. They're not going to tell anyone except for all of their friends and family and CNN. That's funny. You're saying I can't do that? Wait, hold on. So she was carrying a woman with both her hands and legs tied. That woman was Ying Ying. Ling Hu Chong was greatly startled. He never expected that Ying Ying would fall into this granny's hand. When he saw there was no injury on her body, he felt relieved. Ying Ying, Ling Hu Chong called out. You've also come. Ying Ying smiled and said, What's her voice again? I've heard everything. You said you'd never be heartless towards me. I'm very happy to hear it. In front of me, you're not allowed to say those shameless things, the granny shouted. Little miss, do you want a monk or a eunuch? Ying Ying blushed furiously and replied, Your words are really not good to hear. I've thought of this carefully. I want this little kid, Ling Hu Chong, to abandon you and marry Yi Lin, that granny said. But he has decided that he is not willing. Since the moment you opened your mouth, this is the most reasonable thing I've heard, Ling Hu Chong loudly acclaimed. So I'll have to back off for a step and give in to this little kid, Ling Hu Chong, the granny said. I'm going to let him marry both of you. He can become a monk and marry both of you. If he were to become a eunuch, he won't be able to marry at all. But after you're married, you mustn't bully my daughter. Both of you can be on the same level. There's no need to decide who's going to be first or second. You're older by a few years, You're older by a few years only, so Yi Lin can call you big sister. I kind of butchered that. That sentence. Okay, so a polyamorous relationship. She wants him to have 2 wives. Perfect plan, Granny. Perfect plan. Ling Hu Chong only managed to utter this word before that Granny sealed his speech, acupoint. The Granny also sealed Ying Ying's speech, acupoint. Then she said, I've already decided everything, and I can't allow the 2 of you to make it go astray. I'm already letting you little monk to take 2 lovely, beautiful wives. What else is there to say? That bald no commandment, how useless, seeing his daughter getting lovesick, but can't do anything. But when I get involved, everything's solved straight away. When she finished speaking, she flew out of the chamber. So it's become a harem anime now. Oh god. Oh jeez. She's a problem solver, okay guys? She's a problem solver, okay? Unlike that bald no commandment. Ling Huchong and Ying Ying were smiling bitterly at each other. They couldn't speak to each other, and they also couldn't hold each other's hand. At this time, the morning sun was just beginning to ascend, and its light shining in through the window. Ling Huchong squinted his eyes at her. The red candle on the table had not extinguished yet, and its flame was still flickering, with its light smoke floating past Ying Ying's as white as jade face, making her looking even more beautiful. He saw her eyes were looking at the razor on the ground. Then they shifted towards the bottle and the bandages on the table, while her face was showing a mocking look. It was obvious she was teasing him. How dangerous, how dangerous. But her expression quickly changed, and she lowered her head with her whole face blushing red. He knew this kind of matter should not be said out loud, and it shouldn't even be thought of. You feel like the first girl would hate that? Oh yeah, I don't think Yilin would go for it. Yeah, 100, like 100%. He wouldn't go for it. But maybe, I don't know. Ling Huchong saw her looking lovable and bashful, like she had just been caught red-handed doing something embarrassing. He couldn't help feeling moved and thinking, if I were free, I'd have gone there and given her a hug and a kiss. He then saw her slowly lifted her head up, and their gazes met. She immediately averted her eyes. The redness in her cheeks was just disappearing when her entire face and ears went crimson again. Ling Huchong thought, my feelings towards Ying Ying are definitely firm and unwavering. That evil granny is forcing me to marry little Marshall's sister Yilin, so to save myself I'm forced to go along with her for now. But wait till she releases my acupoint and I have a sword in my hand. Does she think I'll be afraid of her? Even though this evil granny's fist and kicking martial arts are good, she's still far below Zuo Langchan and Chief Ren. Her swordplay is definitely not my match. She won only through her light hands and legs, going and leaving without any noise, and ambushing me. If it was a real fight, Ying Ying will surely beat her, and Great Master No Commandment will also be stronger than her. He calls her evil granny? Yeah, because she kind of is an evil granny. Alright, 5-minute break, guys. Give me a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Alright, let's keep on going. When he finished with his thought, he looked around and saw that Ying Ying was again looking at him. This time she didn't become shy. It was obvious she was not thinking of that eunuch matter anymore. He saw her eyes were looking up and the corner of her mouth was turned up, smiling. She was smiling at his bald head. Oh yeah, I forgot he's bald now. She was smiling at his bald head, so she wasn't thinking of the eunuch matter anymore. But now she was laughing at him becoming a monk. Ling Huchong laughed, but no sound was coming out. But Ying Ying was becoming even happier, with her smile getting bigger. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes, revealing a crafty expression on her face. Her left eye winked once, twice. Ling Huchong had not understood her meaning. When she again winked twice, he thought, she winked twice, what's her meaning? Ah, that's right. She's laughing at me for taking 2 wives. He immediately wiped out the smiling expression on his face. With a very solemn expression, he winked once with his left eye. His meaning was, I will only take you as wife. My heart is not divided in 2. Aw. Ying Ying slightly shook her head and her left eye winked twice again. Her meaning was, marrying 2, then it'll be 2 wives. Ling Huchong again shook his head and winked his left eye once. He had wanted to shake his head more vigorously to show his determination, but most of his body's acupoints were still sealed, so he couldn't use any power. Now, his face was looking angry, but he was actually very sincere. Ying Ying slightly nodded, but when her gaze caught the razor, she again shook her head. Ling Huchong gazed at her. Ying Ying's eyes slowly shifted, and they were now locking eyes. The 2 of them were separated by more than 10 feet, but their 4 eyes were talking. All of a sudden, their hearts. Are you really in love if you can't speak with your eyes? All of a sudden, their hearts were intertwined, and there was no need to speak. They both understood what was inside the other's heart. Whether he married Yilin or not was insignificant. Whether he became a monk or a eunuch was insignificant. Whether the two of them live or die did not matter. With their two hearts becoming one, they were both satisfied. This moment was theirs forever. Even if the sky collapsed or the ground split, this moment would never be taken away or forgotten. The two of them gazed at each other. Without knowing how much time had passed, they suddenly heard footsteps coming up the stairs. They woke up from their intertwined feelings and unbounded emotion. The crisp and clear voice of a young lady was heard. "Mute Granny, what are you taking me here?" It was Yi Lin's voice. Uh-oh. What's gonna happen, guys? What's gonna happen? Bells for Ling Huchong's hair? Okay. Sad bells for his hair. His hair that has been lost. Yeah, Bigfoot. I would say the eunuch part is very damn significant too. But I guess I don't know love. If you really love someone, then that part is not significant. Apparently, is what they're saying. They heard her coming in to the other chamber and sat down. That granny was obviously accompanying her, but her footsteps could not be heard at all. After some time, they heard that granny slowly say, "Don't call me mute granny. I'm not mute." Oh shit. She outed herself. Yilin shrieked in alarm. "Ah!" She was extremely confounded and tremblingly said, You're not mute? You're all right?" "I was never mute before," that granny said. Then you were never deaf before. You could hear what I said?" Yilin inquired. She sounded appalled. "Child, what are you afraid of?" the granny asked. "Isn't it better that I can hear what you said?" Ling Huchong heard her tone was gentle and intimate as she talked to her own daughter. At the end, her tender affection towards Yilin was evident. But Yilin was still frightened as she tremblingly said, No, I'm going now." "Sit for a while," that granny implored. "I have something important to talk to you about." No, I don't want to listen," Yilin protested. "You tricked me. I've always thought you couldn't hear. I talked to you about those things. You tricked me." Her voice was choking, and she was so worried that she finally cried. That granny lightly patted her shoulder and softly said, "Good child, don't worry. I wasn't tricking you. I was afraid you'll get sick from keeping all your feelings in, so I let you speak it out, so your heart will lighten somewhat. When I arrived at Hangshan, I've always disguised myself as a deaf and a mute, and no one knows about it. I wasn't deliberately tricking you." Yulin sobbed sadly. That granny softly continued, "I have something very good to talk to you about. You'll be really happy when you hear it." "Is it about my dad?" Yulin asked. "Your dad? I don't care about him," the granny answered. "It's about your big brother Ling Hu." "Don't you mention him," Yilin pleaded. "I'll never mention him to you ever again. I'm going to read the scriptures." "No, wait a second and hear me first," the granny said. "Your big brother Ling Hu told me he loves you very much. He loves you 10 times more compared to that young lady Ren from the Devil's Sect." Ling Huchong and Ying Ying shared a look, and they were scolding in their heart. Stinky granny, telling such a huge lie. Yilin let out a long sigh and softly replied, "You don't need to deceive me. When I first knew him, Big Brother Ling Hu only loved his little martial sister. He loved her with all his heart, and she was the only one in his heart. Later, his little martial sister ignored him and married another person. Then he only loved young Lady Ren. and he also loves her with all his heart. And young Lady Run is the only one in his heart. Ling Huchong and Ying Ying looked at each other, and their hearts were filled with unbounded sweetness. Actually, he's always liked you in secret, that granny said. But you're a Buddhist, and he's the Hangshan school headmaster, so he can't reveal his feelings to you. But now, he's determined and hopes to take you as his wife. That's why he's gone ahead and became a monk first. Yilin cried out in alarm and said, No, that can't be. He can't. He mustn't. You tell him not to become a monk. That granny sighed and said, It's too late. He's already become a monk. He said no matter what, he must take you as his wife. If he can't take you as his wife, then he'll castrate himself and become a eunuch. Become a eunuch? Yilin asked. My master once said that's a vulgar word, and us Buddhists aren't allowed to say it. Eunuch isn't a vulgar word, the granny said. They're those lowly people who attend to the emperor and empress. Big Brother Ling Hu is a most proud person, and he's not willing to be controlled by others. How can he be willing to serve the emperor and empress? Yilin questioned. He wouldn't even be willing to become an emperor, so there's no need to say that he'd be willing to attend to an emperor. So he definitely wouldn't become a eunuch. Becoming a eunuch isn't really becoming an attendant to the emperor and the empress. It's just an analogy, the granny said. The person who becomes a eunuch is someone who can't get children. Can't bear children? I don't believe you, Yilin said. Big Brother Ling Hu and young Lady Run will get married. Then of course they'll give birth to several little babies. The two of them are so good looking, their babies will definitely be cute too. Oh. Ling Huchong took a look at Ying Ying. Both her cheeks were blushing, and she looked extremely happy while being bashful at the same time. The granny became angry and loudly said, I said he can't get children, then he can't get children. Don't say anything about getting children. He won't even be able to take a wife. He's already sworn an oath. He must take you as his wife. I know he only has young Lady Run in his heart, Yilin said. His young Lady Run will get married and you'll get married too. Do you get it now? The granny asked. He will take 2 wives. In this world, there are men who have 3 wives and 4 concubines, so don't mention of only 2 wives. That can't be, Yilin said. When a person loves someone, he will only think of this person. Night or day, his mind will be on that person. When eating or sleeping, he'll still be thinking of that person. How can there still be a place for a second person? Just like my father. After my mother left, he went to the edge of the world to look for her. There are a lot of women in this world. If my dad can marry 2 women, then why didn't he marry another one? That granny was silent for a long time before she sighed and said, He did something wrong before, so he felt remorse. Some are like that. I'm going, Yilin said. Granny, if you mention to other people about Big Brother Ling Hu wanting to marry me, I wouldn't want to live anymore. Why? The granny asked. He said he must take you as his wife. Why aren't you happy about it? No. I think about him all the time and prayed to Buddha all the time for wanting Buddha to bless and protect him and make him happy. I wish for him to not meet with any bad luck or difficulty. I wish for him to get what he wants and for him to marry young Lady Run. Granny, I wish for him to be happy. I've never once wished for him to marry me, Yilin explained. But if he can't marry you, he won't be happy. This will make everyone not to be happy too, the granny argued. It's all my fault. If only you didn't hear what I said. I said so many things to you about Big Brother Ling Hu, Yilin said. He's the world's big hero, while I'm only someone who doesn't know anything. A little nun who can't do anything. He said before, once I saw a nun, I lose all my bets. Once he sees me, his luck will be bad, so how can I marry him? I'm a Buddhist, so I must take care to be clear like the water, and I mustn't think of these things anymore. Granny, don't mention about this again. I also won't see you again. The granny was worried. Silly girl, you're odd. Ling Huchong already became a monk for you, and he said he must marry you. If Buddha blames anyone, then it'll be him. Yilin sighed lightly and said, He has the same thought as my dad? Surely not. My mother was intelligent and beautiful. Her temper was reasonable, and she treated people very well. She was the world's nicest woman, so it's a given that my dad became a monk for her. Me, I'm not even half as good as my mother. Ling Hucheng was secretly laughing in his heart, and he thought, your mother isn't necessarily intelligent nor beautiful, but as for her temper being reasonable, there's nothing to say about that. Compared to you, it's your mother who's not a half as good as you. What do you know? The granny asked. Every time Dad sees me, he always talks about how good Mother was, Yilin said. He said she was soft and gentle, never scolded anyone, and never threw a tantrum. In her entire life, she had never even stepped on an ant before. Even if all the good women in this world are added together, they still wouldn't be better than my mother. He really said that? I'm afraid they're false, the granny stammered. When she said these two sentences, her voice was really small. It was obvious her heart was quite agitated. Of course they're true, Ying. Oh, that's a typo. Of course they're true, Yilin argued. I'm his daughter. Why would Dad trick me? All of a sudden, everything was quiet in the Spirit Turtle Pavilion. That granny seemed to have gotten caught up in her own thoughts. Yilin said, Mute Granny, I'm going. I won't see Big Brother Linghu from today. I'll pray to Guan Yin every day to bless and protect him. They could only hear her light footsteps as she went down the pavilion. After a very long time, the granny seemed to wake up from her dream, and she quietly talked to herself. He said I'm the world's best woman? He went to the edge of the world to look for me? Then he's not a heartless, perverted, and lascivious man? Suddenly, at the top of her voice, she screamed out, Yilin! Yilin, where are you? But Yilin had gone far. The granny again called out a couple more times. When she did not hear her reply, she quickly went down the pavilion. She hurriedly chased after Yilin, but her footsteps were still very light, like that of a cat. And we're done. Yeah, did you guys like that chapter? That was a pretty funny chapter. This woman is so crazy. Yeah, she does have interesting appearance. Like Monk No Commandment is like crazy dude. He's a pretty awesome dude. Yeah, he acts very crazy, and so does her mother. Yandere, helicopter parent. Totally. So it seems like she's going to forgive her husband, right? They're still husbands, right? They're still husband and wife. Yeah, they didn't get divorced. Yeah, so it looks like maybe she's going to forgive Monk No Commandment now, and they're gonna get back together. Maybe. That voice was awesome. Which voice did you like? Which voice was awesome? The granny voice? Oh, you like this chapter, Nikki? Yeah, that was pretty cool. Oh my god, we got 4 more to go, and then we're done. 4 more. Oh my god. This has been like a year and a half, right? Is Monk No Commandment going to get his wife back? Will he? I hope he does. He deserves it. They deserve each other. Dun, 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 dun. When Granny realized she was wrong, yeah. Alright. I opened up a new bottle of wine. This is some rosé. Hey. Oh shit. Let me change. Here you go. Can you see? Yeah. Ooh. You show up every 15 chapters? Okay. Well, I'm glad you showed up on this chapter. It's a pretty good chapter. What was the song that I played during break? Let me send it to you. Let me post it in the chat, okay? You think rosé is my favorite type of wine? Why do you think that? Alright guys, cheers. How often do these happen? These happen every week at this time. Yeah, every Sunday or Monday, depending on where you are. Alright guys, thanks for joining. I'll see you next week. Bye. I love you.